This is an arcade game. This is the new Atari SuperSystem. Arcade, Atari SuperSystem. You may like the SuperSystem better. It has some of the best arcade and sports games and plays every Atari cartridge. It even does something no arcade game can.
Telephone! It's Judy!
It lets you freeze the action.
Hello, Judy.
The new 5200 SuperSystem.
A prelude to war. Hey everybody, this is Retro Rocky. I was hoping you may indulge me for a momentary pause in the right now and a brief trip down memory lane. The year was 1980. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The Cold War was piping hot. The uncertainty due to the residual effects of the Cuban Missile Crisis was still fresher on the brains of our parents than it could ever be for us. An oil embargo had the United States, as well as many of our allies, in questionable, at best, financial states. We just switched our presidency for the 40th time, and the new sheriff in town, Mr. POTUS himself, Ronnie Ryan, did not seem to be dicking around with our enemies. 3 Mile Island did its best to have us all glowing in the dark. Disco had helped birth hip-hop, and then it did the right thing and died. See ya. And hard rock was beginning to birth thrash metal. Alas, 'twas not all doom and gloom for the two generation, you know, Generation X. For in a period of less than 5 years, we were about to trade Matchbox and Hot Wheels, board games, and rabbit ears. You can look up rabbit ears, millennial. I'm not explaining. Chuck Taylors and Wrangler jeans, afros, and crew cuts. For remote control cars and robots in disguise. Video games, cable TV, Adidas, Nike, and Reebok, and designer jeans by Jordache, without Sassoon and Lee. Mohawks and hot top fades picked up right where the crew cuts and afros fell off. You see, science tells us for every action, there's a reaction. For every cause, there must be an effect. For every death, a life. So all the quirky popularities of the 60s and early 70s had to die to make room for the greatest decade ever, fuckers, the 80s. That's right. Said it with a little bit of attitude, because we're the attitude generation. The 80s. Shit. The definition of excess was upon the young Gen Xers. The decade of evolution. The decade of technology, fashion, summer blockbuster movies, hit off the chain new TV shows, Veriflex skateboards, Schwinn Predator BMX bikes, and yes, last but not least, Transformers and G.I. Joe. And video games were all about to collide with slasher movies, MTV, and things of that nature to define the new Pepsi generation. And this generation scared its predecessors so greatly they couldn't even decide what to call us. So they decided that goddamn X marks the spot. And there it was. Generation X was born. And young Retro Rock was about to soak up a whole lot of this Americana like a cute little chubby 80s sponge. Welcome to the story of my love affair with tech and gaming and how it all started. The Atari 5200 SuperSystem. Buckle up. This ride is definitely not for the faint of heart. This is a tale of lows and highs, of requests unfulfilled, of promise and follow through, and yes, of Atari, Milton Bradley, and the ultimate golden era evil empire, Coleco. Winter was indeed coming, and war smelled pretty damn inevitable. War. The first true console war was being agitated right under our noses, and boy, this war would change everything in gaming forever. Hey everybody, what's up? It's your boy Retro Rock, chilling. I finally decided to impersonate Boomer from ESPN and get off the schneid, get this 5200 thing rolling. I usually save my shoutouts till towards the end of my uploads, but I always seem to forget one or two people I wanted to mention, so I figured I'd start out with the shoutouts first. To Sega Lord X and John from Gen X Grown Up, thank you both for being the first two people to ever offer me any type of solid or real advice and encouragement in my endeavors on becoming a YouTuber. As always, usual suspects, where I draw my information from, other retro guys, Metal Jesus, Mad Little Pixel, Glenn's Retro Show, and shout out to Joe Rediford from GameSack. I love your content, bro, but I'm still trying to get used to seeing you without Dave. It's kind of like seeing Han without Chewie, Starsky without Hutch, Cagney without Lacey, Jason without a machete, or NFL football without an overrated Dallas Cowboys quarterback. Oops, did I say that out loud? I only meant to think that. Pause, let me pause for the cause and take a small sip of beverage. Woo! Deer Park, that's good water. That's a retro commercial reference. Y'all wouldn't get it, millennials. Anyway, I digress. The Atari 5200. Understanding the misunderstood. For the record, retrospective. Phase 1. The why. Why was the Atari 5200 SuperSystem created? Well, contrary to many a misguided review and many erroneous retrospectives, the basic reason for the existence of the Atari 5200 SuperSystem is that we asked for it. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, by the time the SuperSystem was released, which was November 1982, Atari had listened to fans almost from the release of the VCS, aka the Atari 2600, aka Stella, aka the Atari, and it goes on and on. We know what it is. It's the original monster of gaming. But almost from the time it came out, fans had been complaining about three major bullet points. Sorry, a little hot today. Gotta partake in some more beverage. Yes, Deer Park, that's good water. Anyway, the bullet points were as follows. A, the games on the 2600 that were arcade conversions looked nothing at all like their arcade counterparts quite often. Second, the same set games sounded, in a lot of cases, nothing like their arcade counterparts. And also, and almost equally important, the same games, in a lot of cases, some more than others, with a nod to Asteroids, Space Invaders, Breakout, and a small handful of others for doing a decent job, most of these games played nothing like their arcade counterparts. So if you take that all in, and also consider that the heat under Atari / Time Warner's ass was beginning to get very uncomfortable from the rising competition from Mattel and its newfangled Intellivision, Magnavox and its newfangled Odyssey 2, and keeping an eye on the slow rise of computer gaming, the Brooks Brothers suit-wearing chumps that were making all the important decisions at Atari by the end of 81, early 82, they finally relented and unofficially acknowledged that Nolan Bushnell and Al Alcorn were right about the lifespan and subsequent duration that the 2600 would be on top, and they advised that it would be a short period. And by announcing and unveiling the Atari Video System X, which was the final prototype name of the SuperSystem and the moniker that was preceded by PAM, more on that later, they pretty much did just that. They acknowledged that Nolan and Al must have been onto something. See, Nolan Bushnell, who, by the way, if you're not aware, is the co-founder of Atari, and Al Alcorn, who was the first engineering hire ever made at Atari. These guys both warned Time Warner when they stepped in to buy Atari and basically bankrolled the retail rollout of the 2600 in 1977 that the time was now to prepare for its inevitable successor. Kids, alas. Warner didn't really want to hear about this, and Warner really didn't want to hear anything at all from Nolan, period. And that notwithstanding, by this time, Atari would have needed to start fast-tracking this proposed follow-up to the VCS, aka the 2600, excuse me. But, nope! The new geniuses at Warner and the new geniuses they put in place at Atari was only interested in pimping out the 2600 forever if it was up to them. Being a visionary, of course, this led to Nolan clashing with the highly educated, take that last part loosely, dumbass Harvard MBAs over the direction of the company. And of course a conflict ensued that led to Nolan eventually being bought off and shown the front door. Now let me, as a side note, for the record, state that their dumbasses will regret this sooner than later. But I digress. Now that I have slightly framed the environment that birthed the SuperSystem, we can move on a little bit to phase 2. The what that goes with the why. Yeah, y'all know what it is. Beverage break. Deer Park, that's good water. Good looking out 6'4" in that water. That water is great. Anyway, on to the what that goes with the why. See, I just want y'all to know YouTubers aren't perfect. We screw up. And a lot of times when you see somebody making perfect deliveries in their YouTube videos, it's because they've edited and re-recorded and re-edited and re-recorded to make it look perfect. I believe the purpose of YouTube is not to come off like you're some professional broadcasting company, but to give people a real raw look into who you are and what you into and what you love. And when we do our job every day, do you go to work every day without going to the bathroom? Nope. Do you go to work every day without taking a sip of water? Nope. They're called commercial breaks. Well, YouTubers don't get commercial breaks, so we have to invent them. My commercial break is, I'm going to take a sip of beverage so I'm not dying of thirst while I try to entertain you with knowledge. Anyway, let's move on. The what? So with phase 1 in mind, let's get down to brass tacks on the what. See, because Atari, which at this point is mainly represented by a businessman with no technology or gaming background at all, named Ray Kassar, who was appointed by the suits at Warner to step in for Nolan. See, they basically had one mission statement, and that was keep the video computer system, the full and actual name of the 2600, because if you didn't know, as a side note, that was only the model number, 2600, of the VCS. Anyway, that aside, they wanted to keep that machine printing money at an insane rate. And by early 82, to be honest, it was still doing that. But again, I say something strange is indeed afoot. It's sad to say that Atari had been obviously caught with its technological pants down by 82. And it's sad also because of the fact that the only machine they being Atari, even half-assed tried to produce, ended up being scrapped. It would seem I was right and something strange was afoot, but surprisingly enough, the plot thickens. See, Atari needed a real big gun, and they needed it really, really fast. Because sad to say, even more shenanigans would ensue. See, by the fall of 82, two more giants joined the gaming console party. Milton Bradley and Coleco would enter stage right with their Vectrex and ColecoVision. And yes, for the record, I still give you the middle finger, ColecoVision, and all of your owners. I do it in jest because I love all human beings, but secretly in my little carnal self, I still hate the ColecoVision. Fuck you, ColecoVision. Moving on though, I digress. I'm sorry. Fuck you, ColecoVision. I'm sorry. I said it again. I'm sorry. Fuck you, ColecoVision. Alright, I'm done. Their consoles not only had joined the home console party, their consoles also beat Atari to the market in release date and in price. And it goes without saying that this was a last straw kind of deal for the Big A. You see, with their first conceived follow-up unit getting scrapped, and no time to create one from scratch, Atari looked backwards and inwards for an answer, and they came up with the Atari 400/800 computer line as a way and a form of technology they could quickly get out the door. Now, don't get me wrong, with tech, often the more things changed, the more they remained the same. And what I mean is, just like now, in this current environment, even back then, computer or PC tech, if you will, was always ahead of gaming console tech. So in light of this, although by computer tech standards, the tech inside of Atari's 8-bit 1979 computers, the 400/800, was quite dated, something strange is slightly afoot. Because although it's dated computer tech by console standards, that tech was unlike anything ever released to the public in mass. And it was a huge boom for Atari to brag about in 1982. So I close with Phase 2, and I'll say this. On paper, Atari and its newfangled SuperSystem should have, and yes I stress should have, wiped the floor with everything and everyone making consoles at the time. Once again though, y'all know what it is, y'all know the drill. I see something strange is afoot, and you will soon learn, some of us the hard way, that having the biggest gun does not always equate to having the highest body count. Onward, Christian soldiers, onward to Phase 3. The when, where, and how much. Oh, y'all know what it is. Dear Park, that's good water. Y'all like that, right? Y'all gotta stay hydrated. That's important. I'm not really it's not something to do funny either. I'm actually drinking water in between all this. Gotta stay hydrated, people. Young people, water. Make water your best friend in the world. Trust me, you'll thank me later. Well, be proud of yourself. You have already elevated your knowledge of this console higher than half of the morons on YouTube that have covered it at all. You should take a bow, because I'm goddamn proud of you. Stand up, shake a leg, do something, do the James Brown, jump back, kiss yourself, jump in a celebrity hot tub. It's too hot in the hot tub, get out the water. You know what it is. Take a bow, because you already know a lot more about the 5200 than people with 1-hour videos do. Anyway, the educational struggle continues. See, all seemed great for Atari at the moment, but stand easy, Kimosabi, because something strange is still afoot. Back to 1982, and by the halfway point of 82, Atari had unveiled the prototype Video System X at the 82 Winter CES, and the official 5200 Super System final product by summer at the 82 Summer CES. By the way, I don't assume people know anything, so I always try to enlighten and educate whenever possible. CES is an acronym, and it stands for Consumer Electronics Show, which is, for our younger viewers, the trade show that preceded E3. So, for those people that don't know, now you know. Before there was E3, Winter CES and Summer CES is where you rolled out all your new wares and you knocked people's socks off. And although Atari had this grandiose rollout, we still didn't know exactly when to expect the new monster of gaming, nor for how much, nor did Atari even offer any info on who would officially carry the 5200. Yes, kiddos, I hate to tell you this, nowadays you take a lot for granted with console launches. We didn't know a price, we didn't know where it was going to be sold, we didn't know a date, we didn't know jack, we just knew it was coming. But alas, I tell you, the educational struggle continues. What we did witness in lieu of hard retail 5200 facts at CES was the release of the previously mentioned goddamn ColecoVision for $189.99 US dollars, damn it, in August of 82, to great fanfare and a pack entitled Donkey Kong that would ensure that at the very least fans of that title would buy their console once they saw it running in TV ads. And shit, there go that damn ColecoVision again. I digress. It was a smart strategy. Add to that, incredibly enough, as the shit was already getting deep for Atari, Milton Bradley also dropped its console for $189.99 US dollars. And its console came with a highly playable clone of Atari's own Asteroids game that not only was better than the officially released port of said game, theirs could be played on its very own built-in display. Something strange is afoot. They didn't even need a TV, damn it, do you hear me? That was built around the same vector-based screen tech Atari used in its very own coin-operated Asteroids arcade units. So basically, for $189.99, if the only game in the world you loved was Asteroids, you could play an almost arcade-perfect version of Asteroids on a screen that looked just like the Asteroid screens for... I don't want to get into the details, but it made Atari look bad. Anyway, and I'm an Atari dude, but we wasn't looking good right now. To add insult to injury, Smith Engineering and the guys at Smith that came up with the Vectrex bought the idea to Atari first, and Atari passed on it. Gotta love those Harvard MBAs, don't you? They just keep popping up every now and then in my stories. Dickheads. Not all Harvard MBAs. Harvard MBAs that worked at Atari, I just want you to know, from Retro Rocky, from the bottom of Retro Rocky's heart, you are the head of a penis. Damn, how's that for grammatically correct? Head of a penis. I move on. I digress. So, with that in mind, the SuperSystem didn't arrive on the major store shelves until November of 1982, and priced at a point that varied and ranged from store to high-end store, anywhere from $229.99 to $279.99 in price. Jeez Louise! That's a Bentley price for what was essentially an Acura. Of course, Acura versus the 2600's Accord. Now, don't get me wrong. It was a fully loaded act, and I love mine to death. But for some, it led them to travel down what we would call more affordable pastures. See, the ColecoVision with Donkey Kong was at $189, and the Vectrex with a clone of Asteroids, Atari's own game, was at $189. But the 5200 was in some cases $100 more. And it came with a game that was released in the arcade, Super Breakout. Yes, it was released in the arcades in 1977! Something strange is afoot! Where's that foot? And again, for many, this sandwich was not looking all that tasty. In fact, it looked more like reheated McDonald's if you listen to some of the extremist 5200 haters. Although I do agree, ain't nothing in the world worse than reheated McDonald's. You might as well eat dog doo-doo. But I digress. We'll say the dog doo-doo for my sister. Now that you have been entrusted with the what, where, and how much, on to the final phase of my retrospective look into the past. Damn, I wish it was still the 80s moment on YouTube. Phase 4, the product, the games, and the so-called crash. Okay, for all of those taking the introductory course Console Wars 101, we are still in 1982. And once the monster had been revealed to the business types, it was on to the kiddos. We was bobbing our heads, we was doing the wop, we was popping, we was locking, we had the mohawks going, we had the boom boxes rocking thrash metal, we was listening to Run DMC, Curtis Blow, Sugar Hill Gang, Metallica, Motley Crue, Megadeth. That's what we was doing. So I'm just framing everything for you. And we was the kiddies that they sold all that stuff to. And we was ready to have more stuff sold to us. And they bombarded us with all kinds of sexy new ads for the SuperSystem during the first Saturday morning in October. You know, cartoons time. The time they know our little asses was watching. I remember seeing it and feeling like Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica, and NASA just had a menage a trois. And the Death Star gave birth to the Atari 5200 SuperSystem. And it was delivered by Dr. Space Shuttle Atlantis himself. All of this, and they could even pause games live. That sounds stupid, but that was a big deal back then. Trust me. When I saw that 5200 commercial and I saw that man pause Pac-Man, if I had $1 for every time me and my best two friends, Dalinti and Jeffrey, had to leave a game of Pac-Man because one of their moms needed something from the store, or because some trash needed to go out, or because it was time to eat, and we had no choice but to watch Pac-Man die, or to watch the Space Invaders invade Earth and kill us because there was no way to freeze the action. That's how important the pause button was. Everybody who takes pause in the game for granted, you could thank the ATARI 5200 that was released in November 1982 for your pause feature. You're welcome. Anyway, I digress. It was big, black, and silver, and it said two things to me. My parents had a few dollars. They had to, at that price point. And either they really, really, really loved me to death, or it had been so long since I fucked up, they couldn't keep coming up with valid reasons to say no. And yes, I stressed they had to be valid reasons, because I was basically the black Alex P. Keaton. At this point in my life, I had a great nose for parental bullshit. Shit, by 82, my sister, alias Dogface, I'll explain later. Think Alex and Mallory from Family Ties. Anyway, Dogface had trained me well. That's strange. Dogface trained me. Anyway, I digress. I had been asking for a game console for almost 2 whole years at this point. Shit, I even scored a report card with nothing but A's and B's. And trust me, that was a rarity for a young, not quite retro yet Rocky. So that's it. That's my story. I wanted to... Nah, you know I'm just messing with you. You know it's more to the story. See, I bugged my parents so much over the last 2 years that by the time those 5200 ads started running in early October of 82, they had already taken me to Toys R Us the weekend before and caught me a 2600 in like 5 or 6 games, just so I would leave them alone till Christmas. For the record, they were definitely making me wait till Christmas morning to open. I cried foul, but Big Bertha, aka Mom, insisted not only was the ball not foul, it was fair and still in play. And for those of you that might not be able to read between the lines, that means I had a black mom or a Latino mom in the 80s, and that meant that this shit can still go back to the store if you want to complain. So I must admit, I chose to digress and complain about nothing. But I do have to acknowledge it was kind of cool that they let me in on the action to ensure that they got the right system and games, but also ensure I didn't spend the entirety of the rest of the 82 shopping season tormenting and torturing myself with whether or not I would be getting a game console or spending another whack-ass console-free Christmas. I know that sounds spoiled and selfish, but I still remember Little Retro before he had a console, and he was a sad kid. I had some pretty cool old heads. Millennials, that's what we called OGs back in the day. You can look it up. Anyway, I must say I was impressed with this new inclusionary parenting technique. But again, something strange was still very much afoot because, of course, that damn commercial happened and young Retro Rocky lost his 10-year-old mind. I'm not sure of what exactly or which exact Alex P. Keaton routine I used to pull this off, but damn straight, if the next thing I knew we hadn't taken the 2600 and the games back to the now defunct Toys R Us, rest in peace, Jeffrey Giraffe. You made us feel like we didn't want to grow up, and obviously for me and a whole bunch of Gen X grown-ups, we haven't grown up. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your loss. You took one for the team. But I digress. We returned the dated tech. Yes, even before touching the 5200, young Retro Rocky was already becoming a console snob. I was the top hat gaming man in 82 already. In one short week, the 2600 went from bringing me great unopened yet, I had to state that for the highly oppressive Jeffrey Giraffe return policy, unopened yet 2600 joy for the monster. But alas, you know the drill by now. Something strange was insanely afoot. See, the way I saw it, there was cyanide in my well-laid Tylenol plans. Millennials, look that one up for yourself. Gen Xers, you remember all that shit with Tylenol back in the day. Anyway, there was Tylenol on my table that I was supposed to take. But apparently, Atari and Toys R Us laced my Tylenol with cyanide. And I say this because after the return of the 2600, we were greeted with a big-ass, depressing, sad, broke my heart, you're the devil, you're Beelzebub, you're Mephistopheles, you're Lucifer. This sign was the devil and evil incarnate. Because this sign said, sold out. And it was hanging on the plastic holder that contained the sleeve for the slips that you would grab at Toys R Us to purchase a console. All I could come up with was WTF. Before that was even a thing. In my Darth Vader voice, I yelled, "No!" Alas, young Retro Rocky, it was true. The dark side had betrayed you. After all of your faithful parental politicking to obtain unlimited power, he left the store feeling like the force is not strong in my family. Like Baltar had escaped. See episode 21 of The Real Battlestar Galactica. The real one. Like the space shuttle had no gas in the tank. Like Kit after he first tangled with Carr. Damn, man. See episode 9 of Knight Rider Millennials. What am I, your retro tour guide? I swear, you millennials are like Jon Snow. When it comes to retro greatness, you know nothing, Jon Snow. But I digress. See, this is, for all intents and purposes, the record being slightly straightened, of course. There are many stories I could tell you about the 5200, a lot of which are boring. And many more that were swimming around this monster in and around its launch that I haven't even touched on. Like, I haven't even gone into the 5200 game catalog, which I think will probably get a doc of its own. It'll be a short one, but it will get one. I just wanted to drop some actual facts. You see, almost since the time YouTube blew up, there have been erroneous details and facts dropped about this monster of a console. And the sad truth is, more than half of the content that is dropped by people on YouTube regarding the 5200 is dropped by people that either got this system secondhand, as in post eBay, as in way past its prime, or worse, they never even owned it, and are simply regurgitating nonsense spewed out by haters or ColecoVision owners. Take your pick. Aren't they one and the same? I digress. Imagine if some guy in your 9th grade class told all the other guys, and girls for that much in your class, that you were gay, and you're not gay. Not that there is anything wrong with that choice, but surely it wouldn't matter either way if by the time you got wind of this narrative, the whole school heard his version of it, and ran with it. No gay guy will want the world thinking he's eating every coochie in the world, any more than a straight guy will want the world thinking his mouth is a glory hole. Alright, extreme, yes, but you get the point. Fact is, in our society, sometimes truth is simply a matter of who told you the story first, and not facts. For instance, a few months from now, there could be 2 million people responding to this retrospective, claiming that they all had the 5200 since day one. Water break, hold on. Deer Park, that's still good water. I'm back. Thanks for sticking around. Anyway, you would have a bunch of those people, 2 million, claiming they had the 5200 since day one, and they always hated it, and it always sucked. And I must admit that, wow, it would be whack if one Christmas after it got released, 2 million kids felt this way. Indeed, that would be sad, if not for the fact that Atari only sold a little over 1 million units. In other words, around 1 million of you little former 80 adolescent lion-ass bastards just got exposed. See, my narrative consists solely and is based to the best of my ability on knowledge and facts, as opposed to word of mouth. And it is indeed these very facts that lend themselves to the understanding that if those 2 million people upload their vitriol quicker and more efficiently than we, the people that actually own the monster, can get our actual facts uploaded, then the liars win. I'm sorry, people, I'm being transparent here. That's just the sad world we live in. Even as the biggest SuperSystem fanboy ever, I can't catch all the BS all the time. No one can. That's why 50 years later, there are still people that think Bruce Lee electrocuted himself on some terrible electronic training mechanism. Why do people believe that nonsense? Because the BS rumors saying that from the 70s floated to the top, way before his wife, kids, and friends could set the record straight. And 5 decades later, it's still floating, shaking my damn head. The point again I wish to reiterate is that nowadays, it's easy for people to take a narrative and make it what they want it to be, instead of making it what it actually is, and what it actually was. And you, as the kids say, can miss me with that one. This monster of a system was far from perfect. Far from perfect. Yes, I'm looking at you. 5200 joystick, which is shitty, oxidizing flex circuit, and extra shitty, diarrhea-inducing, non-functioning, self-centering rubber boot. And you also, my little intimidating, electrical, spark-inducing 5200 switch box. This notwithstanding, for many a kid, if the numbers never lie, that number's around 1 million, including me. This console was their introduction to gaming as a hobby. It was an almost arcade-perfect experience, one that gave them bragging rights over everyone. Yes, even you, ColecoVision, which is stiff as an extra from Debbie Does Dallas joystick, and overly springy to the extreme, feel like they came from a Craftmatic bed fire buttons. See furniture your grandparents had in the 80s for reference, millennials. Craftmatic was the bomb until everybody found out it wasn't. Anyway, long live memory foam. And last but not least, let's not forget about your looks. You had a power brick that looked like a cinder block you copped from Lowe's. But I digress. I suppose my first salvo against the allied forces of Coleco has just been officially launched. Alas, let's jump back to young 10-year-old Retro Rocky. It was the ultimate Christmas morning. The most insane birthday present. A dream realized. A promise fulfilled. A challenge met. A countdown 1, 2, 3 pinfall. Like Ivan Drago and Rocky 4, the Super System was a look into the future. That's right. And maybe, just maybe, that look into the future, much like Ivan Drago, was the source of half of the 5200's problems. It was so cutting edge that it had problems with no ready-to-apply solutions, because these problems never existed before its arrival. Think about it. Let's assume you have even a modicum of knowledge as it pertains to video game history. If this was indeed the case, then you would know there was never an electronic automatic switch box before the Atari 5200. Even by the middle of this second generation of gaming, there had never been a machine that had the back catalog of a predecessor to worry about. Of course I'm speaking about backwards compatibility or lack thereof. And that is because before now, no console ever had a true predecessor. No, the 8,000 different Coleco Telstar Pong clones don't count. Damn! I better keep an eye on this Coleco Ponzi scheme for Nolan. They up to something, and I think it's afoot. You see, again, I state the previous generation was in fact the first generation. Never before had a console come with an analog controller. So a console never had analog controller issues, because analog control input didn't exist before the 5200. Never did people fault one console for not evolving the entirety of the industry and its games. Beverage. Yes, it's still good water. I digress. Because the last gen was the first gen, there was nothing to evolve. What I mean to say is this. The first generation of gaming was basically Nolan, Bushnell, and Ted Dabney, the other co-founder of Atari. This was basically them sitting down with Al Alcorn, that very first engineering hire, the man behind Pong, the legend I was talking about earlier. They all got together and decided to rub two sticks together to create Video Game Fire. Those two sticks belong to Pong. And yes, we'll cover Ralph and the box that got trumped. Bad pun, I guess. Another time. But they rubbed those sticks together, and before you know it, Pong was on fire, and it gripped every young person in America, even some of the old heads too. And that grip was so strong, they rubbed nylon jackets together hoping to score a free game of Pong. Why would they do such a crazy thing, you ask? Because Pong was so addictive, these kids had already spent all the quarters them and their parents had. And they heard a rumor that if you rubbed a nylon jacket together long enough and touched the metal bolts on a Pong machine, the static discharge would trigger a free game. And actually, that was true for the first Pong units. Atari eventually fixed that, but it was true. If you could get a strong enough static discharge, Pong will give you a free game every now and then. And as stupid as they look, flailing their arms all over the place, the addiction had them, and they didn't give a damn. Again, I digress. Never did a console have the weight of an entire industry on its shoulders. See, Atari was the top dog. The Luke to Obi-Wan, the Lamborghini to a Camaro, the NFC East to Washington. Alright, that was a low blow, but they deserve it. Anyway, the 5200 had to succeed, because a loss for Atari was a loss for everyone. Imagine if we judged sports on a grand basis. If football failed, sports would fail. But that's the same burden Atari and the 5200 had on them. And therein lies the problem. Y'all asked too much of my baby. You wanted it to be better than the 2600, but in the same breath, you wanted it to be the 2600. You wanted it to be above in television, but in the same breath, you wanted it to be in television sports. You wanted it so bad that almost all of the 5200 sports games look like high resolution in television sports games. It made no sense. In the meantime, you wanted it to make Vectrex look like a child's toy. Yet it had a better port / hack of Asteroids than your previously released ports for consoles or computers, period. And port, that's just geek speak for a game that started off in the arcades and that was translated to run on a computer or a game console. I guess nowadays a phone, whatever you case. It's something that started off in the arcades, God rest the arcades, that ended up a game you could play at home. To some degree better than others. Think about Atari Pac-Man for the 2600 versus Atari Pac-Man for the 5200. And you're seeing where I'm going with this. Anyway, back to Vectrex. They had a better version of your own game. As a matter of fact, you didn't even bother to release Asteroids for the 5200, even though you promoted it and advertised it in brochures and posters. And please don't give me that analog, non-self-centering crap, because the last time I checked, we got Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Glaxian, Dig Dug, Vanguard, and Defender. All games that require fast, sharp, and intuitive digital input, which we know at this point, by default, the 5200 didn't have. And yet you still found justification to release all of those games I just named. I bet the car, not the house, but I would bet the car, if the 5200 even had a box on the shelves that read Asteroids, quite a few people may have skipped over the Vectrex, because it really was a one-trick pony once you got past the whole vector thing. But on top of that, and somebody help me out here, maybe John from Gen X Gamer can help me out, Gen X Grown Up rather, can help me out. Maybe some other representative that's a respected member of the retro community. Pixel, help me out. Somebody, Metal Jesus, I might be wrong. But anybody over the age of 40, chime in the comment section. But didn't Asteroids in the arcade have a completely all button input setup? And add insult to injury, didn't the 5200 have more buttons than a fake computer from a 70s sci-fi channel show? Like, are you serious right now? In other words, the argument for why 5200 Asteroids and why it doesn't exist becomes instantaneously a moot point, does it not? Because it doesn't matter if it had analog control. It doesn't matter if it had a joystick full of buttons, because Asteroid was ran with buttons. You could have gave Asteroids on the 5200 an all button setup with your controller and still had extra buttons left over. But again, we digress. You also asked the Super System to trounce the ColecoVision, which it did, spec-wise, wholeheartedly. Yet, something strange is afoot, because ColecoVision kicked our ass in price, release date, and packing game. And as much as I fucking hate to admit it, that was good shit, man. And although the 5200 had a vastly superior library of arcade games, it was some of those wonky, unique, funky games that Coleco put out on their console that helped that console gain traction and attention. Attention that should have been going to the 5200. You see, word of mouth is a powerful thing. And it didn't matter that Atari and Warner had millions of dollars for ad campaigns because... Time for beverage. Y'all know what it is. I lied. That was beverage and a couple of nerds. Y'all probably heard the nerds. I'm a nerd addict. What you want from me? Get over it. I'm an 80s kid. Anyway, it wouldn't matter if Atari and Time Warner had millions of dollars for ad campaigns because if every other kid in the schoolyard was talking about the $189.99 ColecoVision and its arcade perfect port, at least that's how it felt back then, of Donkey Kong, and if all the other kids were talking about Intellivision or the 2600, stupid ass Atari for not having the balls to discontinue the 2600 and put all their fruits in the 5200 basket. See, in that fragile environment, an environment for a gaming hobby that was only one generation old, once any kid started to badmouth a console in 82, 83, see, that was what they call in the streets a bad trip. And that trip is hard to come down from. Of course, as owners, we knew the truth, but we were only 1 million strong. And the haters were legion, as in they were many. Check your Bible for that reference. You should, in the times we living in. Anyway, and no system on earth at that time was strong enough to fight its competition, bad press, bad word of mouth, bad responses to problems. Of course, I'm referencing Atari and the issues that plagued the 5200. And on top of all that, fight off good, at least on the surface, competition from Coleco, and deal with and fight off internal, stupidly made, greed-based decisions. Insert those corporate Harvard MBA suits again. And lastly, be expected to justify a high price tag. You simply ask too much of the Super System. Atari, you ask too much of it. Gaming press, you ask too much of it. Owners, we ask too much of it. And of course the haters ask too much of it because they wanted to ask it to do things they knew it couldn't do. It was never supposed to be all those things. It was only ever supposed to be one thing. The thing it started off with, P-A-M, PAM, which was the code name during development of the Super System, and also the name of an Atari employee. An Atari employee, excuse me. It was the name that directly preceded the one I spoke of earlier, System X. And it was also an acronym for Personal Arcade Machine, PAM. I know I told you earlier I would touch on that. And to that end, PAM, it was successful. It pulled off what it was meant to do. See, no system at the time, period, no system had better arcade to home ports than the 5200. Yes, the competition had arcade ports, but they were ports of a lot of B titles. Tell me something. Let's take the best two franchises out of this equation. See, Coleco had Donkey Kong and Atari had Pac-Man. The two console exclusive arcade translations both bragged about almost incessantly in their sequels, Donkey Kong Jr. and Miss Pac-Man. But if we subtract those titles, what is left? Let me paint you a picture. Would you rather wake up as a kid Christmas morning to Carnival, Venture, Turbo, admittedly an important game in the driving game space, but one that was an odd choice for ColecoVision and for its launch, because it was a 1980 arcade hit that had already been way surpassed surpassed, by the end of '82. Not simply due to the passage of time, but also because much better driving games had been released by that time. I say a strange pattern is afoot, my dear Watson. I digress. Back to the land of games. It also had Zaxxon, Cosmic Avenger, Mousetrap, and Ladybug. This rounded out the 1982 Christmas morning arcade lineup for ColecoVision, with the exception of Donkey Kong and Zaxxon. And Donkey Kong was the packing game. At best, all of these games will be the equivalent of late 70s and early 80s B-slasher movies. It's like trying to compare Sleepaway Camp, Black Christmas, and I Spit on Your Grave to Friday the 13th, Halloween, and A Nightmare on Elm Street. But fear not, because Jason, Michael, and Freddy just showed up to crash the B-movie party dressed in a black and silver slasher jumpsuit called the SuperSystem. You see, kids could play that mostly yawn-inducing lineup that was basically meh. You can miss me with that lineup. Or those young adolescents, slightly chubby, had way too many Doritos and turkey ham sandwiches. Those kids could wake up to Pac-Man, Cakes, or Quakes, however you choose to pronounce it. They also could wake up to what was the equivalent of the world's first HD remake for a console in Space Invaders. And I'm not exaggerating. With all my heart, I'm telling you, I acknowledge Space Invaders was 4 years old by launch, but this one is the exception to the outdated rule because this version is easily better than the arcade's official follow-ups at that time, period. Anything called Space Invaders was not better than that 5200 Space Invaders. And that was the first time that had ever happened in the whole gaming landscape. The 5200 had broke ground there. Damn, imagine a game being released on a SuperSystem at launch that trumped, again, pun intended, its arcade predecessor. As opposed, beverage. Gotta water my plants too. Yes, I have plants. Shut up. As opposed to a gimpy arcade conversion, missing an entire level. Yes, I had to stutter on that. I'm looking at you, ColecoVision Donkey Kong. Shit, my neighbor from '82 is still looking for the cement pie factory level in the ColecoVision cartridge. And I'm afraid that level is afoot. But back on topic, the games. The 5200. Let's get back to that. Defender, Glaxian, Missile Command, Centipede, and for all the 5200 Christmas morning kids, of course, once again, I will reiterate that, of course, we had the best version of Pac-Man on planet Earth. So let's recap. And you decide, would you want to wake up to a Donkey Kong that was missing a whole level, that Coleco never advertised was missing? Talk about bait and switch, Jesus Christ. And add more diabolical shenanigans if you look on the back of the box of Zaxxon and Donkey Kong for ColecoVision. A shack-sized something strange is afoot! And it should make ColecoVision owners mad! It seems the pictures on the back of the box are not the actual in-game pictures. This was not ColecoVision gameplay. These shots were taken from something strange that was afoot. At best, these were shots from the arcade, and at worst, they were simulated pictures thrown on these boxes at the last minute. I swear I'm not lying, y'all. Check your facts. Go see for yourself. Or talk to a real retro enthusiast. That was scandalous, man. They started that. They simply said, gotcha, and put that $35 in their deceptive little Connecticut-based back pockets. So they had Turbo, Zaxxon, Venture, Mousetrap, Ladybug, Carnival, Cosmic Avenger. And that's what your parents had to choose from as far as arcade conversions went for your Christmas morning in 1982 for your ColecoVision. Or you could have been playing Centipede, Defender, Glaxian, Missile Command, Quicks, Space Invaders, Super Breakout, and of course, the best ever conversion of Pac-Man made pre-Namco Museum. These arcade conversions were available to the parents of young, happy 5200 owning kids Christmas morning, 1982. See, that's all the Super System was designed to do. And it's exactly what you guys asked way back in the beginning of this trip I took you on. This is what you asked the system to do. You wanted a stronger console than the 2600 with better sound, graphics, and arcade translations. And that's exactly what Atari gave you. You never asked them to give you unique new gaming experiences, which is something the 5200 library gets dinged for a lot. You never asked them for backwards compatibility, and why would you when before it, backwards compatibility wasn't even a thing? You can't be expected to provide a service with only your second console that never existed before you made that machine. There was no precedent. You're dinging it for not having it, and it didn't exist. Yes, ColecoVision and Intellivision had their highly dubious adapters. More on that in a future documentary that I'm tentatively calling bullshit. But that was the renegade shit they pulled off, and at best, for both companies, these devices were afterthoughts. So let's recap again. You asked this beautiful creation to be the reincarnation of the wheel, when all it was supposed to be was the best set of wheels. On behalf of every retro gamer everywhere, Atari 5200 Super System, I say we're sorry. See, at the end of the day, you don't ask your wife for a divorce because she did some stuff you asked her to do. That's just plain old shenanigans. That's stupid ass shenanigans. You didn't hold ColecoVision to the same high standards. I know this because you never bring up the fact that while ColecoVision controllers actually operated longer than 5200 controllers, they operated horribly. The stalk on that stick is short and abysmal. It's stiffer than a 12-year-old watching his first porn. The sound on this machine is 2600. It's so 2600, it's a joke. And it was made of material so cheap, it actually looked and felt like a child's toy. And let's not go there with all the add-ons. Damn, they had more add-ons than the Genesis. By the time you purchased all the add-ons, so your system, your ColecoVision was complete, you just spent more money on that machine than my parents did on my Super System, and you got a whole lot less technological bang for your buck. In the bitter end, all I'm saying is, beverage. Y'all gotta love beverage. I know y'all hate beverage right now. And I apologize for the background noise. Somebody decided to start doing construction on the day I finally decided to do this. Kiss my ass for that, by the way. Anyway, I digress. Let's level the historical playing field. Let's not paint this Rembrandt perfect picture of the ColecoVision using Art Institute computers and your best students, and then use Play-Doh and Etch-a-Sketch to represent the Super System. They both had faults and downfalls, and they both eventually found their way to failure. This machine gave me hundreds, if not thousands, of gameplay hours. On a cold, rainy day, it took me to a sunny, arcade perfect race to the pole position, or to the warm oceanic environment only meant for those truly ready for a jungle hunt. On a hot, too hot to go outside day, it took me to the vast, cool, endless realms of space to ward off invaders and Glaxians alike, all while saving humanoids from landers and mutants and Vanguard class defender vessels. Y'all like what I did there? That was sexy. It let me stop World War III as I commanded missiles with countless countermeasures. It made me smile and laugh when I couldn't break out of a rudimentary multicolored prison with all my high-tech controller shenanigans. It pushed the limits of my imaginations when things got too quicks. You get the pun. Or when the blueprint came out wrong. It was powerful yet still cute enough to give us the wonderfully colorful world of Miss Pac-Man, Dig Dug, Frogger, or Kangaroo. And let's not forget Pingo or Mighty 2049er. Yet, when it was asked to yield that unlimited power, it delivered stuff like Robotron 2084 with twin joysticks, or an almost arcade perfect Centipede with a definitely arcade perfect trackball to boot. Or how about Defender, when it not only looked almost arcade perfect, but it, to this day, if you turned off a light and you turned on Defender for the arcade and turned on Defender for the 5200 and just listened, you would never be able to tell which one was which. It sounded arcade perfect. Thank you, Pokey Chip. I love you. Anyway, see, that old commercial was a line when it said it looks, plays, and sounds arcade. It's just a shame that the company behind it was far, far from arcade perfect, or any other kind of perfect at that time. Alas, this is not a referendum on Atari as a company because I don't represent the entirety of the retro gaming electorate. It's just a flashback to the last original in-house design game console released by the original king of console gaming. Sorry, Charlie, to the 7800, but you're at best a stepbrother to the 2600 and 5200, because let's face it, you have different parents than we do. Your bloodline is afoul with the stench of GCC, who created you. And as for you, Atari XE, come on, man. You're more of an 8-bit computer than the 5200 could ever be, because you're literally an Atari 8-bit computer without the keyboard and disk drive. The last truly respected machine to bear the Atari Fuji logo was the Lynx. And I had a Lynx and I love the Lynx, but let's be honest, Lynx, you too would probably be sitting next to the 7800 on paternity test day with Maury, being as though you are covered in the stench of epics after Nintendo told them to get lost and showed them the Game Boy. But after they felt the uncomfortable bottom of Miyamoto's foot as he kept epics out of their building. And with all due respect to the Amiga team, RJ McCall and David Needle, the real source of the Lynx's power, the Lynx wasn't really an Atari console. So that leaves the Atari 2600 and the 5200 as the last and only consoles with pure Atari DNA. This is kind of sad for a company that was the largest, fastest growing company, not in gaming history, in US history at the time. To only be able to lay claim to two pure consoles with over 24 years of existence under their belt is a telling tale indeed. Jaguar, you beat it. You don't count either. Not only were you designed in the UK, you were manufactured by IBM, so shut up. It was all over your box. Beat it. Well, folks, I'm Poop. What a legacy my SuperSystem and I share together. A tale of returned 2600s, out of stock SuperSystems, and of Mom, who after going to every toy store in the city was able to sneak the one SuperSystem left in all of Philadelphia that she got at the long since dead toy store, Lionel Kitty City. She snuck that into the house while I was still at the barber shop, naive to the fact that this particular trip to said barbershop was a dummy mission concocted by Mom and the canine that I referenced earlier, Dogface, my sister. See, young Retro Rocky would return home and be told she couldn't find a 5200 anywhere. Beverage. Dear Park, that's good water. I say again, I digress. Anyway, I was told she couldn't find one anywhere. This, I'm embarrassed to admit, left me acting like a spoiled 10-year-old brat for the rest of the day. Shit, I even went on a hunger strike to demonstrate my displeasure with the assumed half-hearted measures and efforts extended and utilized by my mom. I ran to my room and I hated everything in the world for the rest of the night. Yup, family, friends, loved ones, screw 'em all. That night, I hated everything from Santa to Rudolph to Charlie Brown and that 19th rerun of him and his sorry-ass Christmas tree, from commercials, from Channel 10 News giving updates to young children all over the world about the whereabouts of Santa and his sleigh. Well, young Retro Rocky had become the living embodiment of grouchy Smurf. Yes, even he hated Nat King Cole and the chestnuts roasting on the goddamn fire. Rocky was Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno green busting out of his Underoos Incredible Hulk pissed off. He showed his shadowy figure only one more time that night. The whole Christmas Eve, he only came out of his room once to sneak downstairs and take Monica out for a walk. Yes, I had to walk my sister. Dogface was special. And to secretly tear off the bottom corners of all the whack presents I did know I was getting that were already under the tree. So far, I had a whack-ass Pac-Man board game, a whack-ass Donkey Kong board game, and a box full of thermal underwear and corduroys. What the? I demand a recount! But it would appear that the last laugh for the company that Nolan built, and for Big Bertha, and most annoyingly for my sister, who I wanted to take back to the SPCA that day for thinking she didn't have my back. They all knew that the joke was finally one on me. See, I was the one always playing practical jokes. I was the one with the rubber spider in the refrigerator, the one hiding behind a closed door when you thought the house was empty. I was always up to something. But this time the joke was on me, and I didn't like it. Boy, was that joke on me. That next day, on Christmas morning, after my sister had to wake me up with a Burger King cup full of ice cold water just to get my spoiled ass out of bed. What kid do you know doesn't fly out of their beds and right to the Christmas tree on Christmas morning? Is that a question you're really asking? Because I can answer that. Spoiled ass, pissed off Retro Rocky, that's who. I love you, Lamonica. That's Dogface's actual name. And actually, Dogface isn't ugly. I just needed to come up with that because I'm her little brother and I'm supposed to disrespect her. So, I love you, Lamonica, but you're back to Dogface. I digress. I chased her midget ass downstairs so fast, which is exactly what she wanted me to do. This canine is real smart. I gotta watch her. See, Dogface outsmarted the prankster supreme. And something was afoot. I say this canine sibling of mine is both strange and highly afoot. This young terrorist, extortionist, had always been the kind of sibling to give or get $5 from mom for candy and snacks, and then proceed to take her innocent and sweet, trusting little chubby brown-skinned brother to the store to buy said candy. And then when we leave the store, she would sit me down somewhere far from our home and count out her portion of the candy and my portion of the candy. And she did it in a way that only Fred Flintstone would fall for. She hit me with the classic 1 for you and 1 for me, 2 for you and 1, 2 for me, 3 for you and 1, 2, 3 for me. And this went on for years. I'm telling you, YouTube, this kind of Trump Tower-worthy trickery ensued for years, and poor Retro had had enough. Anyway, once I got done losing my fat-ass breath, I remembered this Christmas was going to suck. So I didn't even bother with going to the living room until our sad Charlie Brown Christmas tree that was there. Not until my sister gave me this obligatory, we are growing up as kids in the projects, and therefore we should be grateful to even have a Christmas tree that we couldn't even afford in years past lecture, yada yada yada. And at the end of the day, young Retro Rocky said, damn, 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 like Florida Evans in Good Times. Dogface has a point. To say the least, I finally realized she was right. And I followed her into the living room. she can no longer hide the strange large box that was afoot. It was silver and blue, and it read 5200 on the box. The largest game console box ever created. It was so large, it was so big, it had so much unlimited power. It couldn't even fit under the tree. They had to put it in front of the tree. And trust me, there was plenty of space in that tree. Every other branch was missing. She could have got it under there. It was too big. And on that morning, my life changed forever. I hope, sincerely, my little nostalgic trip down memory lane has enlightened and informed you in a way that you appreciate. And all I ask is for a like if you like and a sub if you love. But either way, please fact check my facts. And let's help spread truth in gaming. Truth in gaming lore, truth in gaming history, truth in gaming foundation. There's plenty of factually bad shit you can see, read, and browse online about Atari and the fools running that company right before it went under. Without people blaming the crash, the death of Atari, and the 70s oil embargo on the 5200. It wasn't all on the 5200. Yes, it played a small part, but please, if you really start doing your research, come back to this post. Hit me up in the comments and let me know if you found out something I didn't know. But as far as I know, the 5200 played a small role in the demise of Atari. It was a lot of tomfoolery and nonsense that took away our favorite company. And I miss it. But I've accepted it's gone and it's not coming back. Which is why we got to hold on to our retro consoles, our retro systems, our retro life, our retro gaming. And I'm not saying you have to live in the past. Just don't forget it. Because every now and then you might need that past to put a smile on your face. I love you, Mom. Rest in peace, Pops. Thank you for the greatest Christmas morning any kid in any projects ever had. Thank you, Monica, for taking Mom to Kitty City and telling her to try one more time to see if they had one last system left. Thank you, sis, for telling her what games to get me. Thank you, sis, for telling Mom to get me Pac-Man the following week from Toys R Us for my birthday. Yes, I was one of those spoiled kids that had a birthday a week after Christmas. And yes, I got Pac-Man and Glaxian and what was the other one? Star Raiders. A week later for my birthday. January 3rd. Holla Capricorns, holla Capricorn Nation, holla left-handed gamers, holla. I hope you enjoyed this ride. I thank God for the voice and the opportunity to bring you my story of my favorite Christmas ever. I hope that you're still safe and healthy and being smart. Hope you still got your mask and your gloves and your hand sanitizer and you're washing your hands and you're doing all those smart things. And kids, I know you miss your classmates. I know you miss school. But I hope that the grown-ups don't send you back until they can send you back safely. See, all of the grown-ups making the decisions for you guys, they already went to school. They went to elementary school. They went to junior high school. They went to high school. A lot of us went to college. And they never, ever had to deal with something like this. So, bear with the grown-ups. They're going to make a few dumb choices before they really get this right. But my prayer and my hope is that they will get it right. And one day, you'll sit here 20 years from now talking about how the PS4 was the greatest console ever, when it wasn't even the greatest console of its generation. But I digress. You'll tell that same story, and the legacy of gaming will continue. Once again, shout out to Mad Little Pixel, Metal Jesus, GameSack, Adam Corlick, Figure It Out Productions, Your Average Consumer, Marquez Brownlee, Flossie Carter, my cousin Jake, the annoying Jake, the slightly odoriferous breath-having Jake. Jake is coming. I know I told you before Jake is coming. The Jake is coming, and he will arrive. And once he shows up, it will be afoot. I want to shout out everybody who loves everything retro, especially my guys over at Gen X Gamers and Gen X Grown Up. They do their thing, especially Gen X Grown Up. John, that's a smart man. It's a funny man. He's a nice guy, and he does awesome reviews. And I can say the same thing about Sega Lord X. When you listen to a Sega Lord X retro review, it's really like he's painting pictures with words. And he was the one that let me know it's okay to tell a story while you're doing a review. And this was a story. I hope you stuck with me for it. It's a story about a fat little kid in the projects getting a present he had no business getting, and that present changing his life. Literally, me getting my Atari changed my life. It's why I'm sitting here right now. I love you all. Peace, man. Thanks for your time. Come back and see me.